morning, Josh.
Morning, Dan.
And welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Pretty Good Parent. I'm Dan Nickel. I'm with I guess I'm sort of your host, not really your host. I don't know, I'm just here.
Co-host.
But we're with 20-year professional therapist, Josh Emery, where I pick his brain and get as much information to share with you all. So what am I picking your brain about today, Josh?
You're going to have a lot of picking.
Yeah.
We are talking about the ever-changing, ever-important balance between work and home, and all the ins and outs of like boundaries, concepts, skills. And so that's what we're talking about. We see it every day, all day, everyone talking about need better balance. And then especially with kids, how do you balance work life and home life and with your partner and with your kids? So we're going to get into that today. Make sure you leave with a couple clear takeaways of things you can practice.
Awesome. So the what that we're talking about, I think has been so intertwined, right? The work-life balance, the family work-life balance, because of probably technology after the pandemic, COVID, people were working from home, and like, how do you separate the two, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably easy to lose sight of family in this new kind of age that we live in.
Absolutely. Technology in general seems to have blurred the lines between all the different parts of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Those areas that maybe in the past were more clean cut, like you go to work and you're at your office or you're at your job site and you're clearly not able to do anything else. But then in technology or COVID, those lines have just been erased for a lot of people. We're like, are you at home? Are you at work? Well, I'm working now, but if the baby or the dog or the neighbor or if a kid is homesick, needs something, I'm going to have to jump off this call. And so those lines have blurred. It's like, oh, I'll make up for it in the evening. I'll do a little bit of work, which now we're cutting into like maybe our designated family time. And so those lines have become really blurry. And then people feel like confused and overworked and overwhelmed, and then feeling guilty about what they're not pouring into their families. So what we're going to talk about today is we can't rewrite the workforce or technology, obviously, but having a clear plan that works for us and our families makes a lot of sense. Like, well, don't let culture or technology define how we run our homes and our lives. Like, get out ahead of it and say, this is what I want our home to be like, function like. This is how I want to work. This is how I want to show up at home. But if we don't set those intentions or have that idea, the day just unfolds, right? You get a call, a text, an email, or you're working and you get something from, home, and it's just really blurry.
Mm-hmm.
Not that blurry is always bad. And that's what we're going to also talk about is in the chaotic kind of blurry work week, if you can nail down some specifics to your week, it's a really good start. In some cases, that's going to be enough. But at least having like some clarity on what is a rock that you want to prioritize in your week that other things can kind of flow in around. But if you don't do that with home, work stuff, work life will always fill in.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of speaks to the why. I'm a big fan of the why with all the other why geeks out there. But so I guess why is this important? I guess it kind of, for me, the why would be, well, because I love my family and I value my family. And this is why we're here. This is literally why you and I are here on this podcast, because we love our families and we want to be better parents. But I think also just speaking to the why for me is like how easy it is for habits to just take form without intentionally setting them.
Yeah.
And so you're basically saying, we have to intentionally set these habits or they're just going to, go to the wayside. Like our family's going to go to the wayside, those relationships, all those things, right?
Yeah. It's similar to every part of your life. If you don't have like a vision or a value or a goal you're following, your day is you kind of hand over your day to life events, which doesn't make any sense versus this is what I wanted my day to be about, my hour, my evening, my job, my home life. And then building around that and prioritizing it is the same idea. So the why is if you like or love your family, they need and will benefit from your attention and your investment. If you don't know how to show up and you don't plan on being present when your body is there, your family suffers. And that's the maybe the biggest struggle of our current like culture is people really struggle with being present in all areas, not just home. But you say these people are the most important people in your life. How present are you? And when I say present, where is your awareness in your mind? Your body's there, but your mind could still be unpacking that conversation you have with a coworker or your boss, or still like fretting over the report or projects that's due at the end of the week or the month. And your kid's trying to show something from their day, or your partner's trying to talk about their day, and you're missing what you say you work for.
Right.
Right.
Is a good indicator of that when you're having a family dinner and your wife looks at you and says, "What the hell are you thinking about right now?" Is that a good indicator that you're not present?
It's crazy because it's almost always the guy. It's always the dumb dad who's just like a skeleton, zombie who's still processing work something, right? Now, to be fair, some of it is the exhaustion or that you've run out of fuel. And so it's difficult to engage. But more of it is a lack of focus and intentionality.
Right.
You know, like, and so here's an important takeaway that I prescribe for a lot of people, in not just parents, but it works really well with parents, is setting a transition ritual. So something that allows you to shut down your workday, clear it out, and then set some intentions for your family time. And then give yourself a little bit of a gap there and then transition into that. So like, for example, you come home, change your clothes, take a deep breath, and then set one intention for your evening of like, I'm going to be present. I'm going to make good eye contact. I'm going to breathe slowly. I'm going to touch when someone's like talking to me because it helps me connect. I'm going to sit down versus walk around, take a shower, walk the dog, get your journal out and like debrief your day and do a mind dump so it's not like rummaging around all evening, keeping you up at night, distracting you from your family. Those types of transition rituals, it's not, the magic isn't in the ritual. The magic is in you believing in it and like taking it seriously. So it could be a 5-minute walk. It could be a 5-minute meditation. It could be changing your clothes and you're saying, I'm releasing and taking off my work day.
Yeah.
It'll be there tomorrow. And I'm going to put on these home clothes to really connect as being a dad or a partner and making sure I show up the way I want to show up. And so picking like one kind of trait, right? Patient, kind, considerate, helpful, something that you can like, oh yeah, remember that's right. And then your mind will wander because it's trained now to like continue to think about your day or think about something else. But coming back to that reminder, like, hold on, remember you're working on that. Oh yeah, that's right.
Right.
Clothes, shower, walk, journal, meditation, stretch. A lot of people like working out if you have the energy at the end of the day, just to like flush out the day.
Yeah.
And then be like, all right, you're going home. What's the goal? But if you don't have a goal, you're likely to become very reactive to the environment around you.
Right.
Right. Which is crazy because we already know it's chaotic and unpredictable. It's silly for us not to have an intention of who we want to be in that home environment, even if everyone's tired and grouchy. If I go home and be like, well, I hope my wife's nice to me tonight and the kids don't do something dumb, I'm handing over like my evening and my like continence to everyone else versus the kids are going to be what they are. My partner's going to be how she is. How do I want to be? Like, do I want to be patient and kind? And how do I reset if I get triggered or frustrated? I'm way more likely to show up in the kind of way I want. But yes, going back to like, what are the indicators? Your kid saying like, Dad, are you listening to me? And you're like, oh yeah, of course I am. And you're like half listening at best, or your partner's looking at your face and can tell you're not really here. And it's hard to hear that because it's convicting and sometimes people get defensive. And but if you set an intention and you ask your partner, hey, if I look like I drift off, will you please say something nice, but like reminding me to re-engage.
So having some accountability with your partner to help you in this,
right? Especially if you ask for
way.
it ahead of time, it's easier to give and it's easier to receive.
Yeah.
It's hard to receive when it's just kind of fired at you unexpectedly, even though it's true and it's a good reminder. It's nice to say, hey, here's what I'm working on this week or tonight. Please let me know if you see me like get off track from that.
Yeah.
And then you guys can be a team in that situation of like, all right, what intentions do we set for tonight? Don't make a long list because it's probably not very realistic.
Mm-hmm.
But 1 or 2 character traits or focuses is enough to like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's what I'm working on.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that transition piece. How you're
Yeah.
saying, okay, so this is our first how. Like, how do we kind of fix this problem, right? And it's set a transition. I like the idea of having a trigger for that transition, right? So we're kind of all geeking out right now about the atomic habits and how to form these habits, right? One of the ways that they've talked about in James Clear, his book, is, you know, I guess when you making one that's super easy and it can be like a 2-minute sort of habit, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, I'm thinking, how do you get that transition and having a trigger to sort of start that transition, right? And so whether it's, so I have a home office, for me, I'm thinking it could be when I literally walk through the door of my home office out into the hallway of my main house, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that sort of the defining moment? And then set up that transition, whether it's go walk the dog, go do something to really have that right. Because I think you probably need a bigger transition to really get your mindset than just one trigger walking through the door. Or maybe like, is that enough? Like, you could just be as simple as that and just be mindful and have a 10-second mindfulness. And
Yeah,
like,
it's not
I'm going to be present. And
the effectiveness of it isn't in the size of the transition,
right,
in the ritual. It's in the intentionality.
Yeah.
Most people have a harder time doing it when they're still in like the physical or emotional space that they've been in all day. So if you finished work and you sat in the same chair and then you close your computer and it's like, all right, I'm transitioning now. That's possible for sure. It's not as likely to go as well compared to I'm going to go walk the dog. That's my after work routine. On the walk, I get a chance to kind of like vent and release the day, make space for the evening, and then set an intention, 1 or 2 kind of character traits that I can really model at home. Most people need movement or some sort of physical like event. Change the clothes, take a shower, wash your face, yoga, stretch, walk the dog. Something that's like, oh, you are really moving from this place to this place. And that's why the home office has been so hard. You don't have a commute to kind of like process and release. You just have to step, 5 steps, or for some people, not even a few steps. It's like in their living room.
Right.
And you're like, oh, now I'm like dad versus like I'm worker. And that's a really hard transition. So I would say get out of the house if you can. Go do something, around 5 minutes or more, and then intentionally talk to yourself. I'm releasing today's events. That doesn't mean they didn't happen. That doesn't mean you might not want to address them or need to address them tomorrow. But in this intentional releasing part, make space for the evening. If you don't do that, you have a full plate from your day, and then you're going to take that full plate into your home environment with the people you say you care the most for. And then the second they do one more thing that goes on your plate, you get mad or you shut down or you disassociate. And now you're kind of messing up your highest priority because you're not really there and you didn't make space for the day.
Right.
So that's why the transition ritual is so important. Is it's like it sets you up to succeed at the thing you care the most about. So it's ironic sometimes that we miss the forest for the trees, in that we say like we're working hard for our families, yet we don't show up for our families.
Right.
We show up for work, not every time, not 100% of the time, but most people show up more consciously in their work than they do in their home, even though they say they work for their home.
Right.
It's like really ironic, and it's a big miscalculation on our part. Now, most people don't work exclusively for their kids, obviously. Like, be honest. Like, there's ego, there's camaraderie, there's competition, there's incentive. There's all these like selfish ego kinds of things that are tied to our work. But most people say they work for their families because it sounds nice.
Right.
And I would say most people do, in part, work for their families. But if it's really for your family, great. But make sure you just show up for your family, like regardless of why you go to work. We can talk about that another time, but it doesn't really matter. If you can show up for your family, you're being the best parent you can be. And that's what we're going to continue to talk about is work more, work less, whatever. If you can show up well, that's going to really matter. I think one thing I believe a lot about is quantity and quality both matter in terms of time with our family. But quality tends to matter more than quantity. There are a lot of parents that spend a lot of time with their kids physically, but they're not emotionally and mentally present. They're just hustling. That's not a lot to absorb. The kid's not receiving a lot or experiencing a lot, and the bond is not as strong versus the parent who might work a lot. Maybe they travel for work, but when they're home, they're all in. They've calculated like the cost of being away, and they're going to come home, they're going to shut it down and really connect. You think about your childhood. You can't remember every day. It's impossible. You remember highlights and lowlights. And to create some highlights, it's going to affect your narrative of your relationship with your parent. And to say, like, every Saturday, I remember my dad used to take me to this bakery. We'd do this one hike, or we'd go to this field and play. I have no idea how many times we did that. It could have been 3 times. But the quality was so good, it left a very lasting impression.
Yeah.
Now, that's not an excuse to never come home and just be like, hey, I'll see you once this month, and it's going to be really high quality.
Yeah.
Like, quantity does matter. But quality, I would say, is even more important.
Yeah. Well, and it's so visual, right? You see, whether it's in social settings or just in our own home. Like I said, my wife will call me out at dinner and be like, hey, we're over here. What are you thinking about? Right. You know,
Yeah.
and, or you see it out at whether it's some, sporting event or something, and some parents just on the phone or just checked out or whatever. Right. And so, so I think I would say it goes without saying, but for this first sort of how to of setting a transition and be present, I would assume 100% part of that transition is making sure that you're not bringing in devices,
100%.
laptops, computers, phones,
Yeah.
like to the kitchen table, to the couch with the kids, right? Just
Exactly.
make those things, add some friction there to be
Yeah.
like, it's not easy for me to get back into work or back into, right?
Yeah. It's hard. And it's just important to acknowledge that that's hard, especially if you've developed a habit of having your device with you often. But at the dinner table, no one should have their phone there. If you're watching a movie, no one should be on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
Does it happen? Yes, but just gently and kindly remind people, hey, this is like family time. Can you put your phone back on the counter? It's a good habit to develop. Once they're back into it, they're going to like it more. But everyone knows what it's like to feel that addiction to like the email you might have finally received, or the score that you want to go check up on that really means nothing,
Right?
or a text that you might have missed. That stuff like does not compare to having quality connection with your family. When you say what matters most to you, it's not random text messages from people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not keeping the latest score up to date, or the email I might get that I can't really respond to tonight that I want to know if I got. That doesn't compare to like the quality with our family. But when we're unintentional and we're unconscious of how we're living, we do dumb stuff like have your phone at the table and you're like eating this dinner, one of only a few days, numbered days that you have with your kids in the home, right?
Right.
And you're going to sit there and look at dumb shit on your phone.
Yeah.
Like, it makes no sense. I
Right.
do it. I've done it. I don't want to do it. And it sends a message to our kids. One, devices are, I guess, equally important.
Right.
Or it's that urge that you feel to like look at your phone is real because mom or dad just did it too.
Mm-hmm.
So you should give into it. I mean, it's really bad modeling.
Well, I've heard that saying that on your device, you can reach 8 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
And when you put it down, you're telling the person you're with, you're more important to me than 8 billion people, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever's happening in, celebrity gossip, the sports world, like all those other people, right? It's like, no, you're more important. And so to me, it's just such a clear physical gesture, and how I think you told me how important body language is in communication, right? And so I just think that's table stakes. Like, the devices have to take a back seat during this transition to be present with the family.
Well, you're right. That's exactly what it communicates. It communicates that something, whatever it is, probably not an emergency, is more important than them or us.
Mm-hmm.
And no one wants to really send that message. But if we're not conscious and aware of what we're doing, that's what it turns into.
Yeah.
Right. So this isn't about like not enjoying your job or not working hard. You got bills to pay. But, don't use a cop out like you've got to work all the time for your kids. Like, your kids would be better off to be poor and have you around and be investing in them. Does that mean there aren't stressors when you're poor? And of course there are, right? And it's not saying don't work, but let's not use the excuse of like, this is for the family when you don't show up the way you want to show up because you're still worried about work. Mm-hmm. And so it's an ongoing balance and practice. And it's not a dialed it in, set it on autopilot, and it like took care of itself. It's an ongoing refinement because some weeks are different than, I mean, every day's different. Someone's sick. There is an emergency at work. There is an emergency at home. Everything's constantly shifting. So it's coming back to like, all right, what are your priorities? What do you value most? And how do you show up in this space? Oh, I'm traveling this whole week. I'm going to miss this event. Okay. Well, can your partner record it? Can you do a FaceTime call? Can you have a really good conversation afterwards? Can you make up for it when you get home? Take them out for lunch, or ice cream and say like, I'm so bummed to miss this. Can we review the video together? Or how did it go for you? The magic isn't in just attending or being in the chair at home at the table. It's how present and intentional are you throughout the whole week and throughout their time. So I don't want to say you have to be there for everything because a lot of parents beat themselves up trying to be at every event.
Right.
If you can, it's a great idea to make events versus miss events. But sometimes you're going to miss them, and it's okay. They need to learn that you can't attend everything. It's not always a guarantee. But that intentional conversation, follow up like, hey, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I don't want you to think that you're not important or that work is more important in my life. It's a tough balance, and sometimes I have to say yes to work things. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And then what's so that's number one. Or number one, how? What's our second how?
I don't know. What do we write down?
You got creating transition ritual between home and work.
Oh, plan one.
Oh, that was. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's plan one.
Yeah, again, under the kind of the balance of like quality and quantity. If you can get one solid day, for most people that's a weekend, and I don't mean like from like sun up to sundown. It's like you're only just sitting there staring at your kids or something. But a day where it's all about family and it's family connection, that's going to be enough for a lot of families to feel like, hey, we're in this together. Mm-hmm. We all have like our own thing. We got our friends, our activities, our school, our work, our social life outside the home. But if it's one intentional day in the week, and then you sprinkle in like a few dinners here and there and quality conversations, to and from school, it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat that, and I would say if you do those well, like absolutely, you're hitting the sweet spot and target of like your kids are getting enough of you. Mm-hmm. You could be super busy and not be present in the car, or be present at the dinner table, or even present in your activity because you're so worried about some task or some goal you have, and then the overall score is going to just diminish. Like so, how well you show up is going to constantly give this overall score of, is this high quality? Is this really connecting? But as a general like staple, if you can do one day a week, I like family nights and movie nights. The busier the kids are, the harder that gets. You're like all of a sudden.
So it's not even really a day though. I mean, if it could just be a couple hours of that day, right?
It's unlikely for it to be the whole day. Like again, as your kids get older, they have games, they have events, mm-hmm. they have hangouts with their friends. It's protecting it from all the other things though, right? If you don't say Saturday we're hanging out, we're going to a movie, and you don't even plan that, something will fill in for most families, right. And then you didn't do the movie, mm-hmm. right? So it's not, from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. we stare at each other's faces right. all day. It's, did we do breakfast? Did we do lunch? Did we go for a hike?
Yeah.
After that game, did we go celebrate? Did we do a dinner together? Did we go mm-hmm. to a movie? It's not the whole day. It's like, did you do a quality family thing that designated day?
Right.
If you don't protect it, it fills in with other things, right?
Yeah.
Stephen Covey did the famous, like, put the rocks in the jar first, because if you don't, all the sand and everything else right. fills in. You have these big things you care most about, and there's no space in the jar.
Right.
So family, like, all right, what do we want to hit? I like the idea of like Sunday evenings, planning the week ahead. Like, all right, what do we want to plan ahead for? Yes, we have invitations, we have events, but if we don't say our family needs to get together here, life fills in. And not that it's always bad,
Right.
but you can't guarantee the quality of the rest of the week if it's other people's plans,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you remember about my genius idea of the quadrant system.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
sure
It is genius.
right. And so the whole idea of the quadrant system was your default weekend would be a quarter for yourself, a quarter for your spouse, a quarter for just the family, and a quarter for friends and family, right?
Yeah.
But I think what we've come to find is that there is no sort of default weekends anymore,
Right.
because life just goes so fast.
Busy.
And so, like you said, I think it's just, you have to be so intentional about blocking that time on the calendar and saying, and I think, like you said, even if you are busy, and let's say you're going to a sports game or going somewhere and traveling or whatever, and if maybe you just devote the car ride, right, to like the family time, and then devote, like you said, like the dinners or the lunches or the whatever, right? But
well, I always reference mindfulness because it's a part of every human experience. It's not even about like what you did, it's about how you did it. So if you're present and grateful and engaged as a parent, whether you're driving or making dinner or cleaning up after dinner or whatever it is, it could be wonderful and it could suck. It depends on what you're making of it, right? Like you hear people all the time, like, all I do is drive around, versus I got my kids hijacked. They have to listen to me or I have to listen to them. And we spend time laughing, listening to podcasts or music or their day for how much of our time we're in the car. You could look at it like this is a privilege. When they start driving, you see them that much less. And then after they're driving, then they leave high school, you maybe don't see them hardly at all.
Right.
So it's perspective and intentionality of, well, how are you engaging them versus we had free time to sit there on the couch. Like maybe you don't have that time. But what did you do with the time that you did have with them? Like when you're making them breakfast or getting ready for the day or picking them up, were you present and engaged, or were you running this narrative through your head? Oh God, all I do is drive around and all this traffic sucks and I got to get to this next. If you're not present and mindful, you are missing probably a ton of opportunity to really connect with your kids. And it doesn't really matter how quality the movie was the whole time you're together.
Yeah.
Right. We've scored those things positively or negative most of the time without even knowing it. Well, this is just cleanup. This is cooking. This is dishes. This is fill in the blank. And we've said it doesn't count. And then you've given these opportunities away that you could have made count. Like, oh, you're going to do dishes together? All right, let's take a quick second. Let's pick some fun music, something we can all sing or dance to, and we'll do the dishes.
Right.
Versus the life, you just see life as tasks. You're giving life away. You're giving moments away, not just to your kids, but to yourself too, right? This is like your human existence, whether you're a parent or not. But as a parent, like you have tons of opportunities to connect. Did you see them and did you engage them? Or did you think they only occur on family vacations or on Saturdays?
Right.
You know, like the relationship doesn't know it's a Saturday.
Yeah.
Like the body doesn't know, like your mind's like, well, it's Saturday, it's different. It's Monday, Tuesday, it's Friday. Are you engaging in the opportunity to parent and connect, or is your mind run amok again and wandering through all the to-dos and have-tos, and then you miss this like great conversation with your kid? While dashboard, car time dashboard talk is the best because we have a distraction that kind of like takes care of like the ADHD brain and like discomfort. And we can have this like really good conversation that feels like it's casual and impromptu versus a sit down, stare at each other, like feels pressured kind of conversation.
Let's just make it as awkward as possible.
Yeah, everyone knows like no kid wants to have like their parents just like looking right at them, asking about their life. But you turn to the side and it's shoulder to shoulder. It feels less vulnerable and is less of a spotlight feel, and you'd be shocked of how much stuff starts to come out when you don't like mess it up and you're not like too frantic about getting to the next place.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we always talk about how the stats of how little time we have with our kids, right? And so for me, it's just maybe every time you see your kid, that's an easy transition trigger to be like, wow, I can be mindful for 30 seconds, in passing. And, they just got home and they're running to a sports event or practice or some extracurricular activity, right?
Yeah.
No, we'll have 30 seconds
Absolutely.
to be present and mindful and totally engaged.
Yeah.
And that's
so I do that with touch because we're just a very affectionate family, and I make sure it's either like a fist bump or a hug or a high five, just because I want them to know I see them and they matter, and I want them to feel connected to me, and I want to feel connected to them. And sometimes we don't have time for a long conversation, but to have that physical touch says so much. Like, I see you, we're in this together, even though we have to like go our separate ways in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But if someone is only task oriented and just looking at the clock, you're communicating tasks are more important than the people. You're like, why are you doing the tasks? Like, well, it's for our family. You're like, oh, well, okay. Well, isn't this like a time to connect, like more relevant for our family? I'm not saying we stop doing tasks, but too many people are missing their life and they miss their kids because of the schedule they're trying to keep. And they assume quality events will come at some point, right? But really all we do is condition ourselves to be more and more of something. So more and more busy, less quality interactions.
Right.
More intentional, we'll have more and more shared experiences together.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's like seeing those little opportunities without having to carve out like, oh, it's family night. You should do family night. It's a good idea. But you should connect with the kids as often as you can, whether it's family night or whatever night. And you can do that by just being intentional and like making eye contact and having good touch.
I just learned the G-lock, by the way. I don't know if you know about the G-lock that all the kids are doing. Just throw a quick G-lock out.
I don't know. It's quick. I feel like it takes 5 times to get it right, but you're interlaced. You're intertwined with the person. Yeah. It feels very bonding, right? Yeah. So just to highlight, one intentional day a week, right? And again, it doesn't have to be the whole day, but it's a time where you're really prioritizing connecting with your family. And when I say prioritizing, it means your mind is with your body. So who are you with? That's what you want to, who and what you should be connecting to, not the other things. And that takes a lot of practice to rein your mind back in from wherever it drifted. But one intentional day a week. Quality is going to be more important than quantity, even though quantity matters. You can't always call it in from wherever and expect that's going to always work. And then a transition ritual from whatever you're doing in your day and whatever your different roles are, start to develop like your own transition ritual, and then like breathe life into that, right? Set that intention of what are you transitioning into next and how do you want to show up, regardless of what you're walking into, whether it's work or home. In this case, it'll be home. You're like, well, who knows? We don't know how everyone's day went. Yeah. But if we set up an intention of I want to be present, I want to be kind, I want to make good eye contact tonight, I want to have good reflective listening, I want to be helpful around the house. If there's someone I can help or do something, I want to jump on that. Any of those would be positive for like us investing into our family in that night versus kind of the zombie robot recovering from the day and, assuming it counts as good quality family time. No one feels it when we're zoned out. Right. If we're zoned out and we're tired, we should just say, hey guys, I'm tired. I have a really long day. I want you to know it's not about you guys. I'm going to do my best to recover. But I don't want you to think I don't care. Yeah. Can't use that a lot, but you should use it sometimes. If you're in that zone and you can't recover quickly, at least tell your family. Yeah. I'm bringing 10% right now, guys. That's all I got. That's all I got. Your partner will definitely appreciate that. Now, if that's always the case, they'll be pissed. Yeah. But if it's occasional, it's nice for people to know that and they adjust their expectations. Yeah. Can I add the third or maybe a 2A is maybe on that, your transition is maybe with your partner asking for accountability in that and be like, hey, how is my transition working? Do I seem present? Is this good? And partner who's providing the accountability, be nice. Yeah, be nice. You could really throw some darts, but the vulnerability to ask for that accountability warrants a nice response. But if we team up, and both say this is my intention tonight, and then we hold each other accountable, we're more likely to succeed. Yeah, because then I'm just playing it out in my head real quick. Okay, here's my transition. I walked through the door, from my home office to the couch, wherever. Oh, and I brought my phone. I'm still checking emails. It's like
I think it's fair to be called out in that and be like, you know what, your transition's not working right now.
Yeah.
You need a new one, or get a better one, or
hey, we like you.
Yeah.
Invite people into the space that you want versus point out where they are or criticize where they are, right? Like people are better at hearing accountability when we are invited back into the desired destination. So like, hey, we miss you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you join us? Versus like, hey, a-hole, like, what are you doing over there?
Yeah.
Oh, you're prioritizing working. Those are like attacking kind of that. But if you can invite someone into it, your kid too, right? Like this isn't just with your partner. If your child has like left the space mentally or emotionally, and they're ruminating on their day or they're preoccupied with their phone, don't criticize, just invite them back into the relationship, which sounds cheesy, but you would say, hey, it seems like you're processing your day. Is there anything that you could share with us, like a pro or, a win or a loss to be good for us to process? Or, hey, we miss you. Is there anything we can do to like re-engage you tonight? Inviting someone back in makes it more likely to occur versus attacking or criticizing. It makes it easier to like put your hands up. So there's obviously some strategy and skill in how we generate that accountability and how we invite someone back into that. So if you set the intention of being kind and someone's drifted off into their like media world, just be kind in how you invite them back in. Hey, I miss you. Is what you're doing like super important? Is it an emergency, or can it wait till after like or the movie or dinner, or do you need help with that later? Right? Like don't force the family time with negative energy.
Yeah.
It's like ironic.
Right.
Like it's all family time. It's all life. It's not just at the dinner table. So be mindful of how you're interacting and don't fall into like this categorical, like, well, now I'm dad because I'm at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Versus you get up and now like you're something else. Like, you're always dad.
I'd say pro tip, start with the G-lock. They got to take their hand off the phone to do the G-lock. You look super hip, and you look super hip if you're doing the G-lock.
We all need help.
Or maybe your kids roll their eyes at you when you try the G-lock. I don't know. Either one.
Yeah, or you do the thing that was cool last year.
Yeah.
You finally got that one down.
That was so last year.
Yeah.
We're done with that.
And you do it in front of their friends, too, because that's the best way to embarrass them.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Joshua. Thanks again. I'm going to be way more intentional now this week, thinking about my transitions of how I transition from work, because I know that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
And then the other one is be setting, planning ahead at least a week and be like, hey, we're going to make sure that we have family time on the calendar, whether it's, part of our everyday life or like an actual activity, So
that sounds great. Let's do it.
Awesome. Hassan. Well, thank you all. And thanks for listening to Pretty Good Parent. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Go do it.
All right. Peace.